There's something profoundly democratic about walking. It asks nothing of us except that we move forward, one foot in front of the other, through space and time. And yet within this simple movement lies a constellation of physiological processes so intricate, so beautifully orchestrated, that we might spend a lifetime studying them and still find new wonders. When we talk about losing weight while walking, we're really talking about how to align this ancient human activity with the metabolic machinery that has been refined over millions of years of evolution. Let me begin by inviting you to think about what fat actually is. Not the cultural concept, not the thing we fear in photographs or mirrors, but the biological reality of adipose tissue. Fat is stored energy, yes, but it's also an endocrine organ, a keeper of memories from times of plenty, a buffer against uncertainty. Every fat cell in your body represents a moment when energy came in and wasn't immediately needed. Your body, in its wisdom, decided to save that energy for later. This isn't failure. This is your biology doing exactly what it was designed to do in a world where food was often scarce and survival often depended on having reserves. But we live now in a different world, and our challenge is to work with this ancient system using the tools available to us. Walking is perhaps the most elegant of these tools because it speaks the language your body already knows. When you walk, you're not asking your body to do something foreign or extreme. You're simply extending a conversation that began when your ancestors first stood upright on the African savanna. The first insight I want to offer you is this. The intensity at which you walk matters more than most people realize, but not in the way you might think. There's a popular misconception that you must walk slowly to burn fat, that somehow staying in a mythical fat-burning zone is the key to success. This idea comes from a misunderstanding of how your body actually uses fuel during exercise. Yes, it's true that at lower intensities, a higher percentage of the calories you burn comes from fat. But percentages can be misleading. If you walk slowly and burn 100 calories, perhaps 70 of those might come from fat. But if you walk briskly and burn 200 calories, even if only 50% comes from fat, you've burned 100 calories from fat instead of 70. What matters is the total energy expenditure, the total metabolic demand you place on your system. When you walk with purpose, when you feel your heart rate elevate and your breathing deepen, you're creating a metabolic disturbance that echoes long after you've finished. This is where the magic really happens. Your body doesn't just burn calories during the walk itself. In the hours afterward, your metabolism remains elevated. Your muscle cells become more sensitive to insulin. Your mitochondria, those tiny power plants in every cell, begin to multiply and become more efficient. You're not just burning calories in the moment. You're rewriting your metabolic story. So the first practical wisdom I can share is this. Walk with enough vigor that you feel engaged, that you notice your body working. You should be able to talk, but not sing. You should feel present in your body, aware of your breath, conscious of the effort. This doesn't mean you must always walk at maximum intensity. Variation is its own kind of wisdom. Some days walk gently, meditatively, letting your nervous system settle. Other days, push yourself, find hills, increase your pace, let yourself feel challenged. Your body responds to the totality of these efforts, not to any single walk. The second dimension of this practice involves understanding the architecture of time. When you walk matters because your body exists in rhythms. You are not a machine that operates the same way at every hour. You are a biological system entrained to the rotation of the earth, to cycles of light and darkness, to patterns of eating and fasting. In the morning before you've eaten, your insulin levels are low. Your body is in a state primed to access stored energy. When you walk in this fasted state, you're essentially asking your body to dip into its savings account because there's no immediate cash on hand. This doesn't mean you must always walk before breakfast. But understanding this principle allows you to be strategic. A morning walk, even a short one, can shift your entire metabolic day. It sensitizes your muscles to insulin, which means that when you do eat, your body is better equipped to shuttle those nutrients into muscle cells rather than fat cells. It elevates your metabolism early, setting a tone for the hours to follow. And there's something psychologically powerful about starting your day with this gift to yourself. This investment in your well-being before the world makes its demands on your attention. But let's also consider evening walks after dinner, when you might otherwise be sedentary. A walk can blunt the glucose spike that follows a meal. Your muscles act as a sink, pulling glucose out of your bloodstream not because of insulin alone, but because of the mechanical work of contraction. This is a different kind of metabolic benefit, one that improves your body's ability to regulate blood sugar, to maintain metabolic health in ways that extend far beyond simple weight loss. The wisdom here is to think in terms of metabolic timing, to recognize that your walk can be a tool for working with your body's natural rhythms rather than against them. Experiment with different times. Notice how you feel. Pay attention not just to the scale, but to your energy, your sleep, your sense of vitality. Now let me turn to a third principle, one that's often overlooked, the importance of duration and the curious mathematics of consistency. There's a threshold effect with walking that becomes apparent when you look at the research carefully. A 10-minute walk is good. It's better than sitting. It provides benefits. But a 30-minute walk is not simply 3 times better. The benefits are disproportionately greater because you begin to tap into different metabolic pathways. In the first minutes of walking, your body is using readily available glucose, glycogen stored in your muscles and liver. But as you continue, as these more immediate sources begin to deplete, your body increasingly turns to fat. Not exclusively, but increasingly. The shift is gradual. Not a switch that flips, but a continuous rebalancing of metabolic priorities. If you stop after 10 minutes, you've barely begun this conversation with your fat stores. If you walk for 30, 40, even 60 minutes, you've given your body time to settle into a different metabolic state. But here's where consistency enters the picture with profound importance. Your body is an adaptive system. It responds not to what you do once, but to what you do repeatedly. One long walk is an event. Walking regularly is a signal. It tells your body that this activity is part of your normal life, that resources should be allocated accordingly. Your mitochondria multiply. Your capillary networks expand. Your muscles become more efficient at oxidizing fat. These adaptations don't happen overnight. They accumulate slowly, quietly, like compound interest on an investment. This is why I encourage you to think about sustainability rather than intensity alone. A walking practice you can maintain for months and years will transform your body in ways that a few weeks of aggressive effort never can. Find a duration that fits your life. Maybe it's 20 minutes to start. That's enough to begin the conversation. As weeks pass, as your fitness improves, you can extend this. But the key is that you keep showing up, that walking becomes as natural to your day as eating or sleeping. The fourth insight involves the terrain beneath your feet and the way your body responds to variation in the landscape. Walking on a flat, even surface, is one thing. Walking up an incline is quite another. The energy cost of moving your body against gravity increases exponentially with the steepness of the slope. A 5% grade might seem modest, but it can double the energy expenditure of your walk. A 10% grade might triple it. What's happening physiologically is fascinating. When you walk uphill, you're recruiting more muscle fibers, particularly in your glutes, your hamstrings, your calves. You're creating more metabolic demand. Your heart rate climbs. Your breathing deepens. You're essentially getting more benefit from the same amount of time. But beyond the raw calorie burn, there's something else happening. Walking on varied terrain, navigating hills and slopes, requires your body to constantly adjust, to problem solve, to engage stabilizing muscles that remain dormant on perfectly flat ground. If you have access to hills, use them. If you don't, even small variations matter. Walk on different surfaces. Grass requires more energy than pavement because it's less predictable, less uniform. Trail walking, if available, engages your body in three-dimensional space, requiring balance and proprioception in ways that treadmill walking never can. And if your only option is flat pavement, you can still create variation. Intervals of faster walking followed by slower recovery periods create a similar kind of metabolic challenge. You're teaching your body to be adaptable, to respond to changing demands. The principle here is that the human body is designed for variety, for navigating complex environments. The more you can incorporate this natural variation into your walks, the more completely you engage your physiological systems. Don't seek perfect consistency in every walk. Seek instead to expose your body to different challenges, different terrains, different intensities over time. Now let me address the fifth and perhaps most subtle dimension of walking for fat loss, the integration of this practice with how you nourish yourself. Walking and eating are not separate concerns. They're intimately connected through the web of hormones and signals that regulate your metabolism. When you walk regularly, you change your relationship with food at a physiological level. Your muscles become more insulin sensitive. This means they're better at taking up glucose from your bloodstream. The pancreas doesn't have to produce as much insulin. Over time, this can reduce insulin resistance, which is often at the heart of difficulty losing weight, but there's also a psychological dimension that deserves attention. Walking can recalibrate your appetite regulation. It's a curious fact that moderate exercise like walking often doesn't stimulate immediate hunger the way more intense exercise can. Instead, it can help normalize appetite signals, making it easier to distinguish true hunger from boredom, stress, or habit. When you walk, you're taking time away from food, creating space in your day where eating isn't an option. You're also reducing stress, and stress hormones like cortisol have complex relationships with fat storage, particularly around the midsection. The practical wisdom here is to think about walking not as a way to earn food, or to burn off what you've eaten, but as a practice that makes your body work better overall, that helps your metabolism function as it should. You don't need to dramatically restrict your eating to lose weight while walking. In fact, severe restriction can backfire, slowing your metabolism and making it harder to sustain the energy for regular walks. Instead, focus on nourishing yourself in a way that supports your activity. Ensure adequate protein to maintain muscle mass. Include healthy fats that support hormone production. Don't fear carbohydrates, but choose those that provide sustained energy rather than rapid spikes and crashes. There's a beautiful synergy that emerges when you walk regularly and eat thoughtfully. You start to notice how different foods affect your energy for walking. You might find yourself naturally gravitating toward choices that make you feel strong and energized rather than sluggish. You're not following rules imposed from outside. You're listening to the feedback your body provides. This is sustainable in a way that rigid diets never are, because it's based on partnership with your body rather than control over it. As you think about implementing these insights, I want to acknowledge the complexity of real human lives. You're not a research subject in a controlled study. You have responsibilities, constraints, days when everything goes wrong. The question isn't whether you can walk perfectly according to some ideal protocol. The question is how you can weave this practice into the fabric of your actual life in a way that persists through the inevitable disruptions. Maybe you can't walk for an hour every day. Maybe 20 minutes is what you have. Take it. Maybe some weeks you can only manage 3 days instead of 6. Those 3 days still matter. They're still changing your body, still creating adaptation. The cumulative effect of imperfect consistency over months is far greater than the brief burst of perfect adherence followed by abandonment. Think about walking as a form of medicine, but medicine you prescribe for yourself through the simple act of moving through the world. You're not just burning calories. You're reducing inflammation. You're improving your cardiovascular health. You're strengthening bones. You're supporting mental health through the rhythmic, meditative quality of the activity. You're exposing yourself to daylight, which regulates circadian rhythms and vitamin D production. All of these effects support weight loss indirectly by creating a body that functions well, that has the resources and resilience to let go of excess stored energy. There's also something to be said for the contemplative dimension of walking. When you walk, especially if you leave your phone behind or at least resist the urge to fill every moment with distraction, you create space for thinking, for processing, for being with yourself. This mental space can be transformative. You might find insights emerging about your relationship with food, with your body, with the stories you tell yourself about who you are and what you're capable of. Walking becomes not just a physical practice but a form of moving meditation, a time when body and mind are integrated rather than divided. I think about the patience required for this approach. We live in a culture that promises rapid transformation, that sells the fantasy of dramatic change without sustained effort. But your body doesn't work on the timeline of marketing campaigns. It works on the timeline of biological adaptation, which is slow, steady, cumulative. Fat loss that comes from walking is often gradual. You might lose a pound a week, perhaps less. This can feel frustratingly slow when you're comparing yourself to extreme diets or intense exercise programs that promise faster results. But consider what you're building. You're not just losing weight. You're developing a capacity, a practice, a relationship with movement that can sustain you for decades. The weight lost slowly through sustainable practices is more likely to stay off because you've changed your lifestyle, rather than just restricting yourself temporarily. You've taught your body a new normal rather than simply depleting it and waiting for the inevitable rebound. And there's dignity in this approach, a respect for the wisdom of your body. You're not at war with your physiology. You're working with it, understanding its needs and constraints, finding ways to gently guide it toward health rather than forcing it into compliance. This changes the emotional tenor of the entire endeavor. Instead of shame and struggle, there can be curiosity and compassion. Instead of punishing yourself for past choices, you're simply choosing differently now, today, in this moment. As you walk, pay attention to how your body changes not just in terms of weight, but in terms of capability. Notice if stairs become easier. Notice if you can walk farther without fatigue. Notice if your mood improves, if you sleep better, if you have more energy for the things you care about. These changes are as important as the numbers on a scale, perhaps more so, because they reflect genuine improvements in your quality of life. I want you to think about walking as a practice of coming home to your body. In our sedentary modern lives, it's easy to become disconnected, to live primarily in our heads, to experience our bodies mainly as problems to be solved or sources of disappointment. Walking is an opportunity to remember that you are not just a mind piloting a body. You are an embodied being, and movement is part of your nature. When you walk regularly, you're honoring this, reclaiming something fundamental about what it means to be human. The fat loss that results is almost a side effect of this larger reintegration. Yes, you're creating a caloric deficit. Yes, you're improving metabolic efficiency, but you're also rebuilding a relationship with physical activity that may have been damaged by years of forced exercise or negative associations with movement. You're proving to yourself that you're capable, that you can commit to something and follow through, that your body is worthy of care and attention. In this light, the 5 principles I've shared: walking with sufficient intensity, timing your walks strategically, prioritizing duration and consistency, embracing varied terrain, and integrating walking with thoughtful nutrition, these become not just tactics for weight loss but elements of a holistic practice of self-care. Each walk becomes an opportunity to apply these insights, to experiment, to learn what works for your unique body and circumstances. Remember that your body is constantly communicating with you, providing feedback through energy levels, through how you feel during and after walks, through changes in your sleep and appetite and mood. Listen to these signals. Adjust your approach accordingly. This is not a rigid protocol, but a flexible framework that you can adapt as you learn more about yourself. And finally, be patient with yourself. The body you have now is the result of years or decades of accumulated habits, genetics, environmental factors, stress, joy, all the complexity of a human life. Changing it requires time, but time will pass regardless of what you do. 6 months from now, you'll be 6 months older whether you walk or not. A year from now, another year will have passed. The question is, what story you want to be telling about that time, what practices you want to have established, what relationship you want to have with your body and your health. Walking offers a gentle path forward, one that works with your biology rather than against it, one that builds slowly but surely toward a healthier, more vital version of yourself. Each step is a choice, a small affirmation of your worth and your commitment to well-being. And over time, these steps accumulate into something profound, a transformation not just of your body but of your sense of what you're capable of how you inhabit the world, of who you are becoming.